I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah. So yesterday we looked at the idea of probability, um, Bayes theorem, all those things we saw. Now what we do is we're going to look at we're going to move from probability to the idea of random variables and quickly look into what we call as the moments of the random variables, and we'll get on to PCA. So I'll try to give till the idea of PCA. Okay. Now, the idea of probability basically suggested that okay, whenever you have some kind of uncertainty in your what do you call in your experiment or in your what do you call outcomes that can come from a set of defined outcomes, we model that as a probabilistic model. We say it's a random experiment. We associate some kind of likelihood value and all those things. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the idea of random variables now. So, what are random variables? Why do we even need random variables? Can someone tell me what are random variables? See, we have 1.5 hours time, so I want everybody to participate so that we can quickly go to that PCA idea of PCA. Otherwise, it will take more time. Okay, and this will be the last session that I'm handling for the course. So let's do it faster.
A function from sample space to real number.
Why would we want to do that? So the question is, these are functions from omega to a real number. Yeah. Question is why. And the point is, these are variables, but now we say these are functions. Yeah. So what is the idea now? What is it like? Any idea?
Set is converted to real number.
Why would we want to convert it to real number? Okay, now let's look at this. Um, uh, I'm quite sure most of you have your Amazon spin wheel in your mobile phone. Amazon app. You have this app. It says that look, if you do this, you get 50 rupees. If you do this, you get 500 rupees. You do this 1,000 rupees. This you do, you get an iPhone. This, if you do, if you get to this, let's say you get 1,000 rupees. And this one, you say 100 rupees. 2,000 is already put. So 10,000 rupees, 100 rupees, and this is better luck next time. Have you seen something like this? Then there is a pointer which will be there. Yeah? Have you seen something like this?
Yes, sir.
Most of us would have also
Yes,
played
sir.
it. Yeah, most of us would have also played thinking that at some point of time we may get an iPhone. But all that we get every time is better luck next time. Right? Even in Google Pay, you would have seen people who are using UPI, Google Pay, and other things where you get some rewards. When you try to scratch the card, what is it that you see? Most of the time, you end up seeing 5 rupees, 6 rupees, and better luck next time very often. But the question is, what can we say about the spinning wheel experiment? See, this is a random experiment. Spinning wheel experiment is a random experiment. Okay. Now, what are the outcomes for this experiment? The outcome for this experiment are basically these sectors. I have marked the spinning wheel, or I marked the wheel with these many sectors. Now, what it says is, look, if you have these sectors, then it says that the wheel can come to halt or the pointer can point to one of these sectors. Is that right? Hello? Is that correct? When the wheel comes to a halt, we basically point it to one of the sectors. Is that correct?
Yes.
But then when it points to one of those sectors, what is it that we get out of it? So for example, if your wheel comes to halt and the pointer points to this, what do you get? I'm quite sure most of you would have seen in this exhibitions and all, where they'll say, okay, they put some 10 different items, and then they give you a ring to, throw, and then whichever item that it is going to fall on, that is going to be your, what is that? Basically your reward. Is that clear? Whenever there is a random experiment, there is a certain degree of uncertainty associated with the outcomes of the random experiment, and based on the outcome, now I'm going to give you a reward. So random variables typically do that. Random variables are basically used to associate rewards with a random experiment. Is that okay? This a small thing which you would have played in your school times. Look at Mahabharata also. They played the game of dice. So when that number came, what was the reward for Kauravas? The reward was the Pandavas losing the kingdom, right? So you see that every time you would have played like saying, look, I'm going to toss a coin 10 times. Suppose I get 7 heads out of this. You have to give me 10 rupees. Suppose I get less than 7 heads, I will pay you 10 rupees. You have heard that? You play that game? That's exactly what we're going to do. So what is happening? We are going to map the sample space to a real number. And this is what we call as x of omega basically maps omega to r. Is this clear? Is this fine? Is the definition fine? So this is basically a mapping from sample space to a real number. How is this mapping done? For example, what is it that we said? We said we're going to toss a coin, let's say 10 times, or toss a coin 3 times. So that's easy to do. Toss a coin 3 times. What are the possible outcomes that I can get out of these 3 coins if I toss? I can get all 3 tosses giving me head. One of the tosses giving me a tail. Then 2 of the tosses giving me a tail. And then all 3 tosses giving me tails. Is this clear? So my sample space now is basically not just head tail, but my sample space is going to be head head head, then head head tail, then head tail head, then tail head head, then tail tail head, tail head tail, head tail tail, and tail tail tail. Okay, this is clear. But then the essence of the sample space can be actually obtained by mapping this omega to numbers. What is the number? So we are going to basically count. So let's do this. So we're going to count the number of heads. Right? We're going to count the number of heads. Basically, the function is x. What does it do? It basically counts the number of heads. Now, what is for omega is equal to, let's say, some I. where omega is an element of the sample space. Is this clear? What are the values that I can take? I can take the values 0 because there can be no head, as in this case. There can be one head, as in this case, this case, this case. And there can be two heads, as in this case, this case, and this case. And there can be three heads, as in this case. So what is it that we have done? We have basically moved from the sample space to set of integers in this case. Is that clear? So what have I done? I've basically moved. So we have shifted our sample space. We have moved from the actual sample space to a set containing integers in this case. A set of integers that describe the original sample space in some way. Is this clear? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Now I have a question. What is the question? We have converted this sample space to a sample space which contains this number. So what is it that I'm going to do? I'll say x of omega is equal to x. That means I'm going to say x of omega is equal to 0. X of omega is equal to x, where x is equal to 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, what is it that we have not got yet? We had certain probabilities associated with this sample space. Now, I want to get the probabilities associated with that sample space, and that has to get mapped to these four numbers. Is this clear? So, when we map this sample space to this set of real numbers, we also map the probability which are associated with these fellows corresponding to these numbers. So what is it that we get? Out of eight options that I have only one option which is all tails, no head. And if you look at one head, out of all the 8 options, there are 3 fellows which give me head. This gives me 3 fellows of head, and this gives me 1 fellow of head. Is this okay? Is this fine?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what have we done? So let's write this. So along with this mapping, we inherit. See, this is like the idea of vector spaces. What did we do in vector spaces? We took real numbers and we constructed vectors, and then what did we say? We said we will inherit certain properties of adding real numbers, multiplying two real numbers, and so on. Right? That's exactly what we are doing here. Is this okay? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So now what shall we do? We will do this. We inherit the probabilities. Is this clear? Okay. Now what we do is the following. Now what we do is the following. What is it that we do? How should we inherit this? Suppose if you add all these fellows, all the probability values, we get it to be 1. Right? So what we say the set of values x that this x of omega takes, we call that as Sx. This means this is the set of values that the random variable can take. The random variable x can take. Okay. Now, that means what? We're going to say Sx is equal to 0, 1, 2, and 3. You remember we had sample space there, which was all these 8 combinations. That has got now, what you call, modified to this Sx based on the mapping that we try to do. Is this clear? So we have Sx is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and each of them had some probabilities here. Those probabilities I'm going to get here. And what am I going to say? I'm going to say sigma. This is the random variable x of the random variable x is equal to I, where I is an element of Sx. Or let me rewrite it this way. X is equal to x, where x is an element of Sx. This summation adds to 1. Is this okay? Is everybody getting this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now this particular thing that we see here, Px of x equal to x, this is what we call the probability mass associated with the probability mass associated with the value x. Is this clear? The way this is getting distributed, we say that P, okay, Px of x equal to, okay, I'll put it this way. Px of x equal to x is equal to, let me say this is Px. So this Px is basically the probability mass. What is this then? This is a function. This Px of x is basically a function. What does this do? This basically associates a probability mass with every value that x can take. This is a number, whereas this is a function. This is what we call as probability distribution function. I'm not coming to cumulative distribution function. I'm just saying it is probability distribution function. Is this okay? Is everybody clear with this? Now, what is interesting, in this case, what did we see? Let us write this. So we write Px of x equal to x. First of all, we'll write x equal to x. This x is equal to, we'll say, we'll do this. The values of x is equal to 0, 1, 2, and 3. Px of x is equal to x is basically 1 by 8, 3 by 8, 3 by 8, and 1 by 8. Is this clear? So what do I say? I say this to be Px of 0. That is the probability mass associated with the value 0. Px of 1. These lower cases Px that we see, these are all the mass values. Px of 3. Is this clear? These are all the mass values that I have. Okay. Is everybody clear with this?
Yes, sir.
No. 1 minute. Now I have a question. What is that? Let's take this. This Px of x equal to 0 plus Px of x equal to 1, Px of x equal to 2, Px of x equal to 3, this actually tells us something with respect to the original sample space that we had, that of omega. You remember we had an axiom of probability wherein which we said probability of A union B is P of A plus P of B if A and B are disjoint. You remember?
Yes, sir.
Now what do we see? We see that these are all disjoint events. Not just disjoint events, these are mutually exclusive events. If 0 head happens, you cannot have 1 head or 2 heads or 3 heads. Is this okay? Similarly, if 1 head happens, it cannot be any of these. Therefore, these are all disjoint events. And therefore, we get summation. We get, sorry. So we get sigma Px of x equal to x is equal to 1, you take all these fellows from that set Sx. Is this okay? If you have
Yes,
this,
sir.
so now we are going to make us straight away, we are going to make a definition. We are going to say Sx. This is what? Set of values that x can take, right? The random variable x can take. Yeah. If it is counter finite or countably infinite. If you say countable, that's enough. Countably infinite. Then we say x is a discrete random variable. Is this okay? We say x is a discrete random variable. If x is uncountable, we call this continuous random variable. We call this as continuous RV. Now the question is, with discrete random variable, I can associate mass and then I can add all these things and then I get a 1. What do I do for continuous random variable? Because if it's a continuous random variable, I'm going to have an uncountable set, which means I'm going to have infinitely many fellows. So the mass associated with every point is 0. So if x is uncountable, like x takes the value along the real number interval, the range of x is interval, or this Sx that we see here basically is an interval, then how do we associate probability? This implies point mass. What do we mean by point mass? The mass at every value within that interval, its point mass is equal to 0. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In that case, what do we do? Any idea? Some response, please. What do we do in that case? We cannot do sigma x px of x equal to 1 because you're going to add infinite masses of 0 value and you're going to say it is 1.
Integral a to b p of x dx.
Why should we do integral a to b p of x dx? That is correct. What he said is right. Integral a to b. First of all, you have to define something. But why should we do that? See, in case of point masses, especially in terms of intervals, yesterday we had this question. What did we say? We said that, look, if you want to go and meet your friend in a mall, you say that you want to meet that person at 4 p.m. Now, what did we say? The probability of you reaching exactly at 4 p.m. is 0. The probability of you being found in the mall between 3:45 and 4:15 is something. The probability of you being there in the mall between 3 and 5 is something else. Right? We said that, right? So what are we going to do? We are not going to talk about point mass. This is exactly like what we see in physics. We are not going to talk about point mass in this case, but we are going to talk about density. Okay, we're going to talk about density. We're not going to talk about, what do you mean by density? Mass per unit volume. That's what we know, standard definition of physics. Density is mass per unit volume. Now, what I'm going to say in this case, I'm going to call this as probability density function. Probability density function. And I'm going to denote this as fx of x. Okay. Now, what is this going to be? I'm going to say that if you want to find out what is the probability of finding a point within a given interval, then what you do is you basically evaluate that area in that interval A to B fx of x. This is probability. This dx is some elementary length. Is this clear? Is this fine?
Yes, sir.
So what we're going to do is we're going to look at probability density function. So the first difference that we see is if it is discrete random variable, we say that we're going to look at probability mass functions. If we look at continuous random variable, we say that we're going to look at probability density function. Is this clear? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to walk further. See, this captures what is the difference between these two? We said one is for continuous and one is for discrete. But is there something else also that is there? Do you think there is something else which is there? Hello? Is there something else which is there? PMF, what does it do? It exactly tells you what is the mass. It's an exact model in the sense it tells you what is the mass. Whereas what does this tell? This is not going to tell exact model. This is not going to tell us that it is exact probability weight because the probability weight is 0. So with the discrete, it is always easy to work because you know if you say that I'm going to get 3 heads out of toss of 3 coins, I know what is the exact probability. Here, what are we going to do? We are going to look at, say for this, for example, I have this interval a comma b. Now what I do, I have certain probability which is according to this length. Suppose I take this as a1 b1, then I have certain probability according to this length. Suppose if I take a2 b2, then I have probability according to this length. But I'm not able to pick one point and then say the probability because the probability value is 0. Is this clear? Now, associated with every random variable, you also have another term which we call as cumulative distribution function. Now, what do we mean by cumulative distribution function? But one thing we must know, this gives exact model, this gives the exact profile. That means if you say that, look, I'm going to have a profile like this, it means the probability is going to increase and then it is going to fall down like this. Like if you say that the probability is going to be like this, then this is what you call it as your density function, Gaussian density function and so on. Then you say that this is your exponential distribution and all those things. So basically your shape of this probability density function basically tells you how is the, what is the kind of probability density you're going to have. What about cumulative distribution function? Can someone tell me this? Cumulative density distribution function is basically your uppercase fx of x, which says what is the amount of mass that I have accumulated till this value. P of x less than or equal to x. See, your discrete probability distribution, just say discrete random variable. In case of discrete random variable, you must know that it is equivalent to saying how much money you put every month. Suppose I tell you, in December 2020, I have put some money into my account. November 2020, I have put some money into my account. January 2021, I have put some money into my account. Now, what I do is, your PMF basically tells you what is the money that I've exactly put in a particular month, during a particular month. Whereas my cumulative distribution function is how much money I have saved till that month, let's say December 2020. Is this clear? Is everybody clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is basically add all the probabilities till x. Add all masses till x. That means you say that, okay, x is minus I is equal to minus infinity to x px of I. That's all. Okay. Now what we're going to do, we're going to look at what is going to happen as far as your continuous. This is basically the case of discrete random variable. Now, if I look at continuous random variable, what is going to happen? So, in case of continuous random variable, we are going to describe fx of x as integral minus infinity to infinity to x minus infinity to x fx of u du. Because I have to get till some value x, I replace it with u. Is this okay? Is this fine? Now, what is the difference between cumulative distribution function and these two cases, PMF, PDF?
So in PMF and PDF, we have calculate full value, probability. That value is 1. But here we have calculate still value. Certain value we can calculate.
Okay, but
Cumulative.
the major difference is PMF and PDF give exact probability values. This gives you probability up to some point. It means this only tells me how much money I have accumulated till what do you call till see, for example, if in colleges you apply for leave, casual leave, they say you have 12 casual leaves a year. They won't tell. I mean, if you go and ask how many leaves that I have till now, they'll tell you, okay, probably from last. Let's take this last year, January to December, or probably this year, let's say till January to December. Assume that you are asking them in the month of August. People say, look, you have got another 8 days leave. They are not going to tell you how much leave, how in every month, how many days leave you have taken CL. It is going to tell you at the end of this August month, you have 8 days leave. So you don't have to worry. So it does not give me what is the exact distribution in which I have taken my leave. Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is this clear? Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a call. It was an emergency call that I had to attend.
No problem, sir.
Yeah. So this CDF is only going to tell me how much I have accumulated. So this may not be an exact model, but this is an exact probabilistic model. The second thing that I'm going to say is,
Sir, your screen is not visible. Your screen is not visible.
I'll do it. Sorry. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the second thing that I'm going to say is PMF, PDF may exist, may not exist.
Sir, again, it is not visible.
Again, it's not visible. Okay, there seems to be some network issues again. Just a minute. It's fine only. Just give me a minute. Is it fine now?
Yes, sir. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Now I have this question. What is that? This PMF and PDF may exist or may not exist. So we must remember this. This too, PMF, PDF may or may not exist. Which means we may not really know what is the distribution, exact distribution and stuff. But CDF will always exist. There are certain properties of CDF which we'll probably not take it up now, but instead we will go on to see. One more thing that we must remember is, as far as random variables are concerned, we will note down the following. What is this? You can model a what do you call a random experiment or whatever, random variable, or you can do a probabilistic model based on one, PMF, PDF, depending on whether it is continuous or discrete. Number two, you can have CDF. These are all various probabilistic models. Is this okay? These are all various probabilistic models. But in addition to this, we also have something else. Those are basically what we call as moments-based model. Moments-based models. So what do we mean by moments in the first place? Say, for example, let's look at this. When you conduct exams for your students, and then when you are supposed to put out the marks, what is it that we first say? The class average of this particular exam is this much, right? We say that, right? For example, if somebody, even if you're a student, or let's say your relatives get into a company, sit for a placement or campus interview or any other company interview, what is the first question they ask? What is the average salary that a person gets here? Yes. Suppose somebody is diabetic. What does the doctor ask? What was your HbA1c? 3 months sugar average. Yes. People ask these questions, right? So if I don't have PMF PDF, or if I don't have CDF, which will always be there, but if I'm not able to describe, I can also describe it based on moments. Now, question is, what are all these moments? We have mean or average. Then we have variance and standard deviation, etc. But what we must remember is there are higher order moments also, but most of the random variables that we encounter, most of the phenomena that we encounter are typically described using the first two moments, which are basically your mean and variance. Now we must remember, we must try to find out what is this mean and variance. So how is mean for a random variable defined? Mean of x. We also call that as the expected value of x. This is denoted as e of x. Okay, this is denoted as e of x, which is given by integral x f of x dx if the random variable is basically continuous. This is summation minus infinity to infinity I e x of x is equal to I. Is this clear? What do we do? This basically says every value of I that the random variable takes gets weighted by the probability mass. Is this clear? So this is basically the weighting factor, and this is basically the number that it can take. This is exactly what we see even in an average. Suppose I tell you, find the average of these 5 numbers, 1 plus 7 plus 21 plus 93. Find the average of these numbers. What do? We add all these things and then we divide by 5. So what does actually this mean? This means 1 by 5 times 1 plus 1 by 5 times
Divide by
7.
4, sir.
4. Okay, I'll add one more number then. 8. Let's put this by 5. Because I said we'll add 5 numbers. So I was thinking that way. Okay. So plus 21, 1 by 5 into 21, plus 1 by 5 into 93, plus 1 by 5 into 8. Now, what is this? This simply tells me that, look, the probability mass for each of these values are the same. That means Px of x equal to x, where the value of x is equal to 1, 7, 8, 21, 93. All of them are the same. 1 by 5, 1 by 5, 1 by 5, 1 by 5, 1 by 5. Look, this is what we call as equally likely distributed random variable. This is exactly what we see here. So your average that we do is basically your expected value of x that we try to do. Now the point is, suppose I have a random variable x, which can take value, let us say -1, 0, 1, only these three, and then it takes a value, let us say 1 by 2, 0, 1 by 2. Or let us say, okay, forget about the 0. Let's take -1 and 1. It takes the value half and minus half and, half and half, equally likely again. Now, this is P of x equal to x. Now, what is the average in this case? Expectation of x is nothing but -1 into half plus 1 into half. So we basically get 0. Which means this average 0 tells me that there is something somewhere wrong. Wrong in the sense, look, this average 0 is not going to convey any information to us. Because it simply shows that, look, there are certain negative values that the random variable can take, and there are certain negative positive values which the random variable take. They are of equal magnitude. And when you add, the negatives the negatives basically cancel out the positives and you end up getting 0. Let's take a simple scenario. Let's take this example. Suppose X is basically a signal. Okay. Let us say there are people who are working in nano sensors and all those stuff. Suppose let's say this X takes a value. Basically, it's a voltage. So it takes a value, since you are working at nano level, let us assume that it can take, say, -25 microvolts, or probably even less, and plus 25 microvolts. Now, x takes this value half, and this is P of x is equal to x. Okay, another application I have, wherein which I define same random variable x takes a value x, and let us assume that this x can take 25 volts and -25 volts. And assume that P of x is equal to x. This, again, equally likely, half and half. Now, what is the average of this? The average of this is, what's the average of this? The average of this is 0 microvolt. The average of this is 0 volt. Right? Now, when I say the average is 0, I really cannot predict what is the range. What is the range I'm operating? Am I operating in microvolts range? Am I operating in volts range? I really don't get. I don't really get what is the spread of this random variable. So if I want to find out the spread of the random variable, what I need to do is I need to center the random variable, which means I basically try to subtract the mean, and then I take the expectation of the squared fellow. So what I do is I define what we call as variance. This variance, which I'm going to define as sigma squared x, which is nothing but expectation of x minus mu x, where expectation of x is also called as mu x. So mu x the whole square. Now, since I'm putting a square term here, I can be guaranteed that there will be no cancellation of numbers. Therefore, I'll get some positive number, and then I will know if I take the square root of this, square root of sigma x squared is what we call as standard deviation. Okay. I have a question. We use something similar to this. We've seen something similar to this in vector algebra. What is that? Can you guess what it could be? Hello? We've seen something similar to this somewhere else. What does standard deviation basically tell? What does standard deviation convey to us?
Magnitude of
Yeah, go ahead. What does standard deviation actually convey to us? It does not convey anything to us.
It is how I spread out the numbers throughout the.
That is true. How? But what is it actually? It tells you deviation means what? Deviation from where? See, when deviation from where? There should be some reference, right?
Deviation from, I think, mean point.
Deviation from mean. That means it is distance from mean, right?
Sir,
It
yes,
is a
yes.
distance. Yes. Now you will see that this is similar to your vector length. This is square of that vector length. I don't know how many of you are from electrical engineering. Is there anybody from electrical engineering branch in this particular workshop? Electrical, electronics, computer science? Or everybody is mathematics background?
Computer science.
Computer science background you have? If there are some electronics and communication, computer science also would have done some kind of electrical engineering, very basic electrical engineering. We see that the expectation of X that you see is basically the DC voltage in a signal. Whereas your variance is basically equivalent to power. I'm quite sure you would use, computer science engineers could have probably done some kind of image processing course at some point of time, where in which you put that signal to noise ratio, pixel signal to noise ratio and all those things, right? PSNR and all. There you talk about signal to noise ratio means basically signal power to noise power. But the noise power is basically measured in terms of the noise variance we have. Is this okay? Is this fine? So now what we see that the mean and the variance, most of our random variables that we encounter typically are what do you call it? It can be described using these two. So if I know the mean and variance, I at least know how the random variable is going to be. I can make certain guess. So this is another model. Now, so what we say is expectation. There are something called as moments about the origin, and there are moments about the mean. Moments about the origin are basically given by expectation of x power n. This is equivalent to integral x power n fx of x dx, again minus infinity to infinity. This is in discrete case, it is x in the value that it can take, it is x power n tx of x equal to x. If you take about the mean, basically you subtract the mean, you shift your origin to your mean, you subtract. So what do we get? We get expectation of x minus mu the whole power n, which is nothing but integral minus infinity to infinity x minus mu the whole power n fx of x dx. And the same thing that we do here in case of discrete, which is x minus mu the whole power n px of x equal to x. X is this okay? These two are two important measures that we have. Okay, now this is in the case of single random variable. Now I want to look at multiple random variables. So why would I look at multiple random variables? For example, let us say when you applied for an interview to the place that you're working, what all people would have asked you? In the sense, qualification, essential qualification, what would they say? They would say, preferably first class in BTech, first class in MTech, PhD degree, and some prior experience. Right? They would have said all these things. And then what is it? The what do you call it? The first class in BTech, first class in MTech, and prior experience. These are all like some kind of random variable. Now, your offer that you're going to get from the college, the appointment order that you're going to get, or the event of you getting an appointment, is basically a function of multiple random variables. Is this clear? So in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to look at quickly two random variable case. Then you can expand it to any n random variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at two random variable case. Two random variables x and y by weight. So what we're going to do is, like how we defined probability mass function and probability density function, I am going to define what is called as joint probability mass function and joint PDF and joint CDF and joint moments. Is this clear? This is defined as Tx comma y of x comma y. This is defined as notated as fx comma y of x comma y, and this is fx comma y of x comma y, and this moments we say that expectation of x power I y power j. Expectation of x power I y power j. Is this clear? So everything that we have in one dimension, now we have moved on to two dimensions. Now, why would we want to do this? Why do we even want to look at two-dimensional random variables? What is the advantage? Can you please tell me that quickly?
Is in matrix form.
Huh? It will be in matrix form, but why would I want to study two random variables together?
Both relation x and y.
Exactly. For example, we always have this bad habit of correlating. We say that, okay, if this fellow studies it very well, if he scores high marks, that means he is a particular person is intelligent. We always say this, no? If a student scores very high marks, the student is actually intelligent. Or we say that any student who scores very good marks in mathematics is expected to score very good mark in physics, right? Or that, look, whenever the fuel prices go up, the vegetable prices go up. Fuel prices or fuel price is a random variable. Vegetable prices are random, is another random variable. Now, what do we say? We say that we find some kind of correlation between these two, the relation between these two. Is that clear? We are going to see what is the effect of these two on something else. That's exactly what we say, effects of x comma y, px of x comma y, and all those things. Is that clear? So what we do is, this is an example. Let's write this. Let's write this example. Let x be fuel price in rupees and y be vegetable price in rupees. Now, what I want to find out, the following. I want to find out how do these together work? What is the effect of these two? Or I want to see if x increases, does y increase? If x increases, does y decrease? If x increases, is there no effect on y? Is this clear? No effect on y. Now, whenever x increases and y increases, we say that x and y, the random variables x and y, are positively correlated. When this happens, we say that the correlation this is in the other direction. That means when something increases, the other fellow decreases. We call this as direct proportionality, inverse proportionality, and all these things, right? And when x and y have when x has no effect on y, then we say this is going to be
Constant.
Independent. Or we won't say independent, we'll call this as uncorrelated, because
Constant you can call it, sir.
no, you cannot say constant. Because there's no relation between them, right? I'm only studying the relation between them. See, when x increases, y increases, I can actually talk about the slope. When x increases, y decreases, I can talk about the slope. So that slope is positive, the slope is negative, I can say something. This, if I say, like when you say, I have to talk only in terms of the slope. Okay. This means there is absolutely no effect on it says x says I will go the way I want, y says look I will go the way I want. We are not in any way. See, for example, uh, uh, let's look at this. See the cost of we say till recently, at least till last year, if somebody gets a fever in China, it never had any impact on us, right? It never had any impact on India. So the health of a person in China is completely decorrelated from the health of a person in any other part of the world. It was only after this corona what we said, if somebody is getting a fever over there, then what do? We start looking for which other countries people are getting fever, right? Which means there is some kind of correlation that we say. Is this clear? We also had this, right? We also said, look, the number of people who are getting affected by COVID, it increased because there were a number of people who came from other countries is on an increase. The number of people who traveled between states could probably cause an increase in the number of cases. These are things we studied, right? Now, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the same thing, variance and all those things. How are they defined here? We're going to look at the first thing. So we have what is called as expectation of xy, which is nothing but my correlation. So how is this going to be defined? This is going to be xy, fx comma y of x comma y, dx dy, minus infinity to infinity, minus infinity to infinity. In case of, again, discrete, it is going to be ij px comma y of x equal to I, y equal to j. So this is over sx and sy. Is this clear? Now this is called correlation. Similar to what this is like, similar to your, similar to that variance that we saw in a single dimension case. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at covariance. That means how are they going to work together, or what is the what do you call joint spread or something like that. So we're going to look at expectation of x minus mu x into y minus mu y. You remember we said covariance in this case we defined something. What did we say? Expectation of x minus mu x the whole square is variance. The same way now what we're going to call this is covariance. Expectation of x minus mu x into y minus mu y. Suppose if y is equal to x, then what do we say? We get x minus mu x the whole square, which is nothing but our variance itself. Now, covariance is basically this. You subtract the mean from the random variable of the first random variable, subtract the mean of the second random variable from the random variable, take the product of these two, get the expectation of that. That is going to be your covariance. Now, suppose, there's a question now. Suppose x is, let's say, weight in kgs, and y is, let's say, height in centimeters. Okay. Now, what is the unit of covariance? Covariance has a unit kg centimeter, right? This is in kg, this is in centimeter. So your unit is kg centimeter. Now suppose this is, let's take, I measure the weight of 10 students in India, 10 students or height I measure in centimeters. Since in India we measure in terms of kg and centimeters, I'm going to get covariance which is in the unit kg centimeter. Suppose I take these fellows and then I go to US and then measure x and y again. There in that case, I'm going to measure weight in pounds, and height I'm going to measure in inches. Now, what is the unit that I'm going to get? In this case, covariance, I'm going to get unit as pounds inches. Yeah. Now, can you tell me what is the relation between kg and pounds? Hello? How many kgs make a pound? How many pounds make a kg? How many inches make a centimeter? How many centimeters make an inch? Can someone please quickly find out and tell?
2.52 cm is equal to 1 inch.
Okay. So 2.52 centimeters. I'll put it as 2.5 centimeter. This is equal to 1 inch. How about kgs and pound? What about kgs and pounds? Can you tell me how many pounds make a kg? How many kgs make a pound?
One pound is equal to 0.45 kg.
1 pound is equal to point.
45
I'll put
kgs.
approximate. Oh, I'll put 0.5 kgs is approximately 1 pound. Yeah? Is this right? Approximately, I'm taking this. Now, let us look at this. Suppose my correlation, this expectation of x minus, my covariance that I measured here is, say, 100 kg centimeters. Okay, I get some number, 100 kg centimeter. Now, when I do this in pounds inches, can you please tell me how much it is going to be? So, we know that 2.5 centimeters make 1 inch. Therefore, this is going to be, what is this going to be? 100 centimeters is going to be what? How many inches you're going to get? Can you please tell
Nearly
me?
40.
40 inches, right? 40 inches that I'm going to get. Now, what you see, a number which was 100 has now become a number which is 40, right? In India, I had a larger number for the same set of students, for the same set of measurements, but in a different unit. I end up getting a smaller number, which means what it says is this covariance, whenever you measure, it typically varies with respect to the units of measurement. I want to remove this dependence of units, and that's exactly why I go to this idea of correlation coefficient, which I define as rho x comma y, which is covariance of xy divided by standard deviation of x, standard deviation of y. And this value is between -1 and +1, which is similar to the cos theta that we have. Cos theta between two vectors, or cos theta of, if you take the theta to be angle between two vectors, we have cos theta is equal to a dot b divided by length of a, length of b, less than or equal to 1. You remember sometime back only we said standard deviation is basically the deviation from the mean, and we said it is some kind of vector length. That is exactly what we see here. Therefore, your cos theta that you say actually measures your correlation, because cos theta actually tells you how much of, if cos theta, what do we say? Your dot product basically tells you how much of one vector, information about one vector is contained in the other direction, right? Therefore, these two are something like similar quantities. Now, the problem is, if I want to, if I want to look at, let's look at this. So, suppose I have, let us say, suppose I have this random variable x, which measures weight of 100 students, and random variable y measures height of 100 students. Okay, that means what? I have x1, x2, etc., x100. I have y1, y2, etc., y100. Yeah. Now, the moment I put this, I basically get into the notion of vector random variable. This random variable is a 100 component vector. This random variable y that you see, it's a random vector with 100 components. Is this clear? Now what I do, I take the expectation of this and then I try to remove the mean from each of these fellows. So what do? I take expectation of x in this case and then I subtract this. So this nothing but the moment I get the expectation of this 100 values, then what I do, I subtract that x from here, mu x, etc. till mu x. Similarly, I do minus mu y, etc. I do till minus mu y. Now, what am I going to get? I have done this random vector, which means now I have a mean subtracted vectors. Now I want to find out the covariance between these two. So covariance in this case is basically given by expectation of, let us say, x minus, suppose I have n components. Typically, when we have n components of a vector, we say x minus mu x. This is a vector into x minus mu x, the whole transpose. So where now I'm going to do something else. Here I said x takes different values, therefore it's a 100 component vector. Suppose I take x, the random vector x, to be such that every component is a random variable, x1, x2, etc., xn. Everything is a random variable. That's what we just saw. Those are made basically numbers. Now I'm going to say random variable x can take a value, integer value between, let us say, 150 centimeters to, let's say, 180 centimeters. So x1 will be some particular number, x2 will be some particular number. So we are going to take the random variable, each of these components themselves to be a random variable, which means now I can find out correlation between each of this. So now what I do, I basically get this, and this is what we call as covariance matrix. Because this will generate a matrix. Always remember, if I have a vector 2, 3, and then I multiply with the transpose of 2, 3. There are two ways that I can multiply this vector. One is I can take the transpose and then I can multiply with the vector, which is going to give me the length of the vector, which is 4 plus 9, which is 13. The other way is take the vector and multiply it with the transpose. What am I going to get? I'm going to get 4, 6, 6, 9. I'm going to get a 2 cross 2 matrix. This gives a scalar. This dot product gives a scalar. Inner product, this we call as outer product. This gives a matrix. This gives a matrix. Now what we see is, what is the nature of this matrix? A vector into the transpose always gives me a square matrix which is symmetric. So your covariance matrix that you see will always be a real symmetric matrix. It will be a real symmetric matrix. What is interesting is, this real symmetric matrix, the property of this covariance matrix is this. You're going to have, along the diagonal elements, you are going to have variances and off-diagonal elements. All these off-diagonal elements are going to be covariances. That means this matrix is going to capture the relation between multiple random variables in terms of the covariances. Now, if we know that if this covariance value is 0, let us say if these two values are 0, then what does it mean? It means the two random variables are uncorrelated. That means x and y, x1 and x2 are uncorrelated. If covariance is 0. That means they have no correlation at all. Now, what kind of a matrix would that be? Suppose if I take a square matrix n cross n, and diagonal elements are variances, and all other off-diagonal elements, they are all zeros. What do we call such matrices?
Joint.
What do we call a matrix which contains elements only along the diagonal and all the off-diagonal elements are 0? Basically a diagonal matrix, right?
Diagonal matrix.
It's a diagonal matrix, right? You see, now what we have done, we have moved from the idea of probability to use the concepts from linear algebra to convert a covariance matrix which basically had non-zero covariances to a matrix which contains off-diagonal elements to be 0. Basically, you want to get a diagonal matrix. How do we do this? This is a matrix which says variables are all correlated. Now I want to get a matrix in which the random variables are uncorrelated. So what do? I basically look for eigen decomposition of my covariance matrix. Eigen decomposition of covariance matrix. Okay. So that I can diagonalize this. you can do diagonalization. Okay. Otherwise, the most important property that you would see is in case of Gaussian random variables. Typically, we say that if x and y are independent random variables, then we say they are uncorrelated. If x and y are uncorrelated, they need not be independent. Only in the case of Gaussian, only Gaussian random variables, jointly Gaussian random variables, uncorrelated implies independence. Okay. Only in the case of uncorrelated random variables, in the case of Gaussian, uncorrelated random variables meaning independent. That means now what I need to do, we really saw the other case the other day when we saw PDP inverse, or we said PDP transpose. We said that from A is equal to PDP transpose, I can always get a D, which is nothing but P transpose DP. P inverse AP, right? We had P transpose DP, AP. This is what we had. I can do the same thing on the covariance matrix now. I can decorrelate it. The other thing that we can do is, you can do your, if you want to find out, see, for example, when I have multiple random variables, not all of them will make significant impact. For example, as I said, when you apply for a position in some company or probably in a college, what are all the things that you're asked for? You're asked for your 10th mark. They check your 10th mark. They check your 12th mark. They test your college grades, how much you scored in interview. They check all these things. But you think everything matters there? All of them get equal weightage? They don't get. So now what we do is we want to find out which are all the fellows which will get, which make significant influence on the decision to give you an appointment letter. Which are all the random variables which are significantly influencing your appointment order or your appointment or job offer in a particular place of work. Now, if you want to do that, what we do is we go in for principal component analysis. Principal component analysis is what we do it on covariance matrix. We do PCA. For PCA, basically it's an SPD on covariance matrix. If you do this, what we get is, you remember in SPD when we mentioned, we said that a matrix A can be written as U sigma V transpose. You remember we said this? And what we do is the sigma, we are going to do something. We are going to arrange the the singular values in this manner: sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma r, where in which sigma 1 is greater than sigma 2. You remember we did this, sigma 2, etc., sigma 3 greater than, etc., greater than sigma r. You remember we did something like this? We said arrange the singular values in the descending order and corresponding corresponding singular vectors are whatever eigenvectors of your A transpose A transpose, you fill it in the corresponding column. Suppose if sigma 1 is the largest singular value, in the matrix U, you put the corresponding eigenvector. In the matrix V, the first column is the corresponding eigenvector of sigma 1. Sigma 2, you put the corresponding second eigenvector in the second column, second eigenvector in the second column of V. We said you put that. Now, if you see this, we will end up finding that sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma r, these are the R principal axis. You remember when we said, suppose you take 500 cross, let's say 5. I have 5 variables and I have 500 measurements for each of those variables. Or let us assume that I'm going to take 5 cross 500. What do we mean? I have 500 variables of which I make only 5 measurements each. In this case, I fall deficit because 500 variables require at least 500 measurements. That's when I'll get a linear equation. I can do whatever I want. In this case, what I do for 5 variables, I end up making 500 measurements. So totally, the dimension of this matrix is 500 cross 5, and the dimension of this is basically 5 cross 500. So what is the maximum rank that this matrix can have? It can have 5. It cannot have anything more, which means our data is there in this dimension, which is 5 cross 500 or 500 cross 5. Now what we see is that the rank can at most be 5, which means your entire information is present in at most 5 directions or 5 random variables. Now what do we do? Finding out what these are, what that would contribute to that would be basically your principal component analysis. So PCA helps you identify, helps us get all those variables or we should say, let's not say all those variables. It basically helps us get the direction of largest variance. Why do we want the direction of largest variance? Why not we look at direction of smallest variance? Hello? Why should we always look for direction of largest variance and why not smaller variance? Hello? Am I there in the meeting?
So they're giving the answers through chat box, sir.
Oh, please don't do that. Please don't do that because I cannot see the chat box. I put the screen. I have to shift.
They have given largest variance gives the separability. Discrimination of class would be easy.
Best thing is largest variance gives more information. You must remember that.
Okay, sir.
Right? Largest variance gives us, it tells that, look, it is in this direction. There is something interesting happening. Get that. Is that clear? So PCA is actually, I mean, if you, what kind of separability are you looking at? Can someone tell me this? Okay, probably I'll look at the chat box now. Can someone tell me what kind of separability are we talking about? Mahesh, can you tell me more? Class separability, classification problem, it's fine. But what kind of separability is that? Linear separability, or what is it that we're going to talk about? See, that's what they typically, what do you call it? What we essentially do
Sir,
is...
can you just repeat the question? They could not get the question, sir.
Okay. The question is, what kind of separability are we talking about? Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What kind of separability are we talking about? The second thing is, what are we actually trying to do in PCA? Geometrically, what are we trying to do in PCA? See, any idea what we're trying to do in PCA? Other than this, it gives the largest variance. I mean, the largest variance gives separability, fine. Discrimination is easy. The question is, essentially, geometrically, what are we trying to do in PCA?
Reducing the dimensions.
You are trying to reduce. That's fantastic. Reducing the dimension? Of course, you have to reduce the dimension because you are calling from a very large dimension to a smaller dimension. But is there something else that we do? You're trying to find the direction of vectors which gives maximum variance. That means what are we trying to do? See, we have data, we have collected data, and we have plotted the data there in whatever dimension that we have. But this underlying structure that we want from that data does not exist in that higher dimensional plane or higher dimensional space that you're looking at. Therefore, what you do, you basically try to project it onto a lower dimension space. There, that is exactly where the rank come into picture. Okay, when I say I have a matrix whose dimension is like say 1000 cross 700, and the rank of the matrix is 10, it simply means entire information that I have about this data that I have collected is there in a 10-dimensional subspace. It is not there in a 100-dimensional space. It is not there in a 70-dimensional subspace. It is there in a 10-dimensional subspace. If I say the rank is 10, that means I will get 10 significant ten non-zero singular values. Those 10 directions are the ones which are going to tell me that reveal the structure of the underlying data, wherein which the direction corresponding to the largest singular value will be the direction of maximum variance. Is this okay? Is this fine? So what we essentially do is, we try to do a rotation. We try to do some kind of rotation to ensure that we view the data correctly. Is that clear? See, many times what happens with, even in our real life, what happens, you try to solve a problem. You try to solve a problem by not looking at a problem in a different way. Many times we say that, okay, we are facing this problem. But the point is, when you look at it in a different, when you think differently, you can always solve a problem. That means you have to reorient yourself to look at that problem in a particular direction to solve it. That's exactly what we do even in PCA. You may have been given the data whatever data that you have collected. It could be in a specific basis, with respect to a specific basis. But now what you try to do is, you are trying to look for a better basis in which the data gets represented properly and you get the complete structure of the data revealed. And that's exactly what your PCA does. Is this clear? Is this fine?
Yes, sir.
Any questions that you have? Shall we wind up, madam? Are there any questions?
Participants, if you have any questions, feel free to ask with the sir.
No, the pointer screen is visible, but just that I put my chat. I will probably do this. Just a minute. In case you have any doubt or any clarifications that you want, please feel free to mail me here. MRA CCE courses at gmail.com.
So can you just write it on the board?
Yeah, I've put it here on the. The screen is not visible. I'll do that. Just a minute. Share screen. Is my screen visible? So you can mail me here.
Yeah,
MRA
nice.
CCE courses at gmail.com. Okay. Are there any questions that we have here?
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, what is the main difference between this singular value decomposition and principal component analysis? Both are used for the dimensionality reduction.
See, this will tell you one thing. Your SVD, what does it tell you? It basically gets you a best basis. See, suppose I have a matrix A. Let's say this. I have a matrix A, which is say 5 cross 3. Okay. I have matrix A, which is 5 rows and 3 columns. Now, these 3 columns, basically, let us assume that these are all linearly dependent columns, which means these would be the basis for the column space of A. Yeah. Since these are 3 linearly independent columns, my column space is a 3-dimensional subspace. Therefore, these 3 could be the basis for the 3-dimensional subspace. Is that right? Can I tell that?
Yes.
Now, if I end up doing SVD for this matrix, what do I get? I basically get, these are just linearly independent fellows. If I do SVD, what is it that I get? I would basically get this following. What is that? I will get a set of orthogonal bases, orthonormal bases, in fact. So if you look at this is U, this is sigma, this is V transpose. If you take U is what? U is basically, these are 5 component vectors. These are 3 component vectors. This is 5 component vector and a subspace. It's a 3-dimensional subspace of a 5-dimensional vector space. Is that right? There are 3 columns. That means it is going to span a 3-dimensional subspace of what? Each vector is going to be 5 components. So my column space is a 3D subspace of 5-dimensional space, subspace of R5. Is that right? Now, these are just linearly independent fellows. What I do with my SVD is I end up getting 3 orthonormal bases. See, the idea, the orthonormal basis, what is the advantage of using orthonormal basis? Orthonormal bases help us retain all the information that we have. In the sense, let's look at this simple thing. Suppose I take this matrix sine theta. I take this matrix cos theta, sine theta, minus sine theta, cos theta. Let's take this. Okay. Now, what is the dot product of these 2 columns? It is minus cos theta sine theta plus cos theta sine theta, which means they are 0. What is the length of each of these columns? Square root of cos square theta plus sine square theta, square root of sine square theta plus cos square theta, which is 1. This is basically an orthonormal column. The columns are orthonormal columns. Now, suppose if I try to rotate this vector xy, this is a rotation matrix which rotates the vector by theta. If I rotate this, I will get a resultant vector which is y1, y2. Let us assume that I do this. This is r theta into x, x1, x2. I get y1, y2. Okay. Can you tell me what is the length of y1, y2? Can someone tell me the length of y1, y2? The length of y1, y2 is the length of x1, x2. Because orthonormal transformations preserve length. Orthonormal transformations, orthonormal bases preserve length. Orthonormal transformations preserve length. Orthonormal transformation preserves area. It preserves shape. It preserves every. That's why you call all these things. No, isometry, isomorphism. You put all that, whatever that you want, you can tell there, because it maintains every damn information of the input vector in the output vector. Now, in this case, when I do this, I basically move from a linearly independent basis to orthonormal basis, which is even more powerful. What is the difference between orthonormal basis and linearly independent basis? Orthonormal bases are inherently linearly independent, whereas a linearly independent basis need not be orthogonal. Is that clear? So I end up looking at the data that I have in terms of orthonormal basis. Your PCA exactly does the same, but on what it does it on a covariance matrix. Is this clear? Your PCA, you're trying to do it on covariance matrix and then try to look at the data from a direction which will make sense about the data, which will reveal more information about the data. Is that clear? It is SVD on your covariance matrix. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Sir, I have one more question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Now let's say that 2 vectors are given and 2 vectors represents 2 documents. So when I want to compare or similarity between 2 vectors, we use cosine similarity.
You basically do dot product. That's all. A dot B. Yes.
Why can't we use Euclidean distance for finding the similarity?
See, the easiest thing that you can do is take a dot product of 2 vectors. Right? That's exactly what is the reason. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Can we wind up, madam, if there are no questions?
No, sir. So 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, you have presented so many basic things which are very much related to the fundamentals of the maths. So one thing I would like to say is that translate the good things of your learning into the welfare of humanity, which you have done, sir, by translating your knowledge to understand a very basic simples with respect to linear algebra, probability, and statistics, sir. So we are very much thankful to you for your sincere efforts that you had done to make us to understand the basics of maths, which are very much related to further AI or whatever it is, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wish you all a very great year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dear participant, one more request. Next session we'll have at 11:30. Sharas sir has shared some of the materials related to the next sessions. It has been mailed to your mail ID, which has been given. Please refer to those materials when you come for the next session at 11:30. So we'll meet you at 11:30. Thank you.